Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to tackle a huge topic in the tech world, Terraform. Look, if you've ever heard that phrase, infrastructure as code, and thought, whoa, that sounds complicated, you are in the perfect place. We're going to dive in, and I promise by the end of this, you'll see how all the different pieces connect in a way that's actually pretty simple.
So I want to kick things off with this really powerful statement from the source material. You now understand enough to follow a real project. Let that sink in for a second. The goal here isn't to make you an expert in the next few minutes. It's to give you the confidence to look at a real-world Terraform project and think, okay, I get what's going on here.
So how do we get there? Well, let's start by changing how we think about Terraform. Don't think of it as complex code. Instead, think of it as something way more familiar, an infrastructure blueprint. It's just like a blueprint for a house, right? It shows what you want to build and where everything goes, but you don't actually have to go lay the bricks yourself.
And you know what the best part is? We're just going to focus on how the pieces of this blueprint connect to each other. We're not going to get lost in the weeds of, specific AWS or Google Cloud details. You don't need to be a cloud expert for this. Today is all about learning the logic, the actual language of the blueprint.
All right, so what are these dots we're connecting? Let's take a quick tour of the 5 key building blocks you're going to find in pretty much every single Terraform blueprint out there. These are the absolute fundamentals that make the whole thing work. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with the provider. This is your foundation. The provider simply tells Terraform which platform you want to build on. Are you building on Amazon Web Services? Google Cloud? It's like picking your set of tools. The provider is the specific toolbox for that one platform. Okay, so once Terraform knows which toolbox it's using, you can start declaring resources. And these are the actual things you're building. They're basically the nouns of your infrastructure, a server, a database, a network. You just write down what you want, and the provider knows exactly how to build it. And that's a perfect lead-in to variables. Let's go back to our house blueprint for a sec. Instead of writing paint the walls blue, what if you just wrote paint with wall color? That way, you could reuse that same blueprint for another house and just change wall color to green. Well, that's exactly what a variable does for your infrastructure. It makes your blueprint super flexible and reusable. Now, this is a big one. How does Terraform know what it's already built? The answer is the state file. Seriously, just think of it as Terraform's memory. It's a special file that keeps a record, mapping your blueprint to the real stuff it created in the cloud. This is so important. Without it, Terraform would just be guessing, maybe even destroying and rebuilding things by accident. The state file is what allows Terraform to make really precise, predictable changes. And last but not least, we've got outputs. So your blueprint just created a new server. Awesome, but you probably need its IP address, right? An output is just you telling your blueprint, hey, when you're done building, tell me what this specific piece of information is. It's the blueprint talking back to you, giving you the critical details you need.
Okay, so we've got our 5 pieces of the puzzle: the provider, resources, variables, state, and outputs. But right now, that's all just a text file sitting on our computer. How do we go from that static blueprint to actual running servers and databases in the cloud? How do we bring this whole thing to life?
Well, it all happens through this incredibly simple and really beautiful 3-step workflow. This is the engine that turns that blueprint of yours into actual reality, and it's the core of what you'll do with Terraform every single day. The 3 commands are init, plan, and apply. That's it. Initialize, preview, and execute. This simple, repeatable little dance is what makes Terraform so powerful and, maybe more importantly, so safe to use. Let's quickly look at what each one does. First up, Terraform init. You usually only do this once when you start a new project. It just looks at your blueprint, sees that you said you want to use, say, the AWS provider, and it goes and downloads the special plugin it needs to talk to AWS. Think of it like gathering all your tools before you start building. Next up is maybe the most important step for your sanity: Terraform plan. This command is your safety net. It's like a dress rehearsal. Terraform reads your blueprint, compares it to its memory in the state file, and then it generates this detailed report of exactly what it's about to do. It'll say, I'm going to create one new server, change one network setting, and I'm not deleting anything. You see everything before a single thing actually happens. And this is where it all just clicks. The plan is just that, a plan. It's a preview. Nothing in the real world has changed. Only after you've looked over that plan and said, yep, that looks right, do you move on to the final step, Terraform apply. You type yes, and Terraform executes that exact plan. It turns the preview into reality. No surprises, you are always in control.
So there you have it. You get the components of the blueprint and you get the three-step workflow that brings it all to life. You genuinely have the foundation now to understand real projects. So the big question is, where do you go from here to keep this momentum going?
Well, first, just practice. Create a tiny little blueprint that builds one small free thing. Just get your hands dirty. Second, go on sites like GitHub and just read. Read real Terraform code. You'll be amazed how quickly you start seeing the patterns we just talked about. Providers, resources, variables, they're everywhere. And finally, just stick with one cloud provider at first. It's so much better to go deep than wide when you're building that initial confidence.
And that really brings us to the biggest, most important takeaway of all. Don't stress out about memorizing every single command or every type of resource. Just focus on the logic, right? The blueprint describes the goal, and the plan and apply workflow gets you there safely. Because you really don't need to memorize Terraform, you just need to understand how it thinks.